Hello, in this video I'm going to go over all the key points of the ThrustMaster T500 RS force feedback wheel. I'm going to do this video whilst playing Assetto Corsa. Hopefully I don't miss anything out, but if I do, don't forget to just drop a comment and I'll try and get back to you. The most noticeable thing about the T500 the first time you use it is that it has really strong force feedback. And it has a fast rotational speed from higher degrees of lock compared to the G25, for example. It conveys the weighting of the car and generally what you'd expect a force feedback wheel to do. So as for positives, really strong force feedback. It feels quite smooth, it feels quite rubbery, which gives you this sense of feeling that you're driving the car wheel, and the weight of it makes it feel as if you're driving a heavy car, whereas with cheaper force feedback wheels, that aspect is quite abstract because the cars often feel quite light due to the force feedback being really light. It's also really quiet, apart from the vibrations going through your table and annoying the people in the flat below. The actual rotational noise and the gearing is fairly quiet, like you wouldn't notice it outside the room. And if you're looking for a force feedback wheel to use and secretly sim race without your wife or your girlfriend noticing, apart from the vibrations through the floor, which may raise some suspicions, it's a lot quieter than some of the other wheels on the market. Lots of buttons as well, really nice. They all work really nicely. Well, they're bog standard buttons, to be honest, but they're nice and clicky. I think they've got, they'll last a long time. There's nothing wrong with them. It's got a little D-pad on it as well. So there's just plenty of buttons to map, which again is really handy. They're a little bit too far in the centre of the wheel for my liking. Like if you were in the heat of the moment, you just wanted to use your thumbs, or say you're using Oculus Rift and you just wanted to learn where it was. You could do, but I've got fairly beastly hands, or like medium-sized hands. People with smaller hands, the buttons are too far in the middle, and it's got this dirty PlayStation logo, but we won't talk about that. Of course, the PlayStation logo does mean, and the PlayStation buttons do mean, it works on a PlayStation, which isn't a bad thing. It's really nice. I mean, if PlayStation 3 is coming down in price now, you could pick up Gran Turismo, do the Gran Turismo Academy. I mean, you might as well. So really, if you're getting this wheel, you're getting a good wheel for the PlayStation, which you also get with some of the Logitech wheels, but this has all the PlayStation buttons on it. And I have to say, I think this wheel works really well, specifically with GT style cars, like slower road cars and supercars, far better than it does with F1 type cars or like proper single-seater race cars. The gear buttons are really nice as well, the upshift, downshift, although they don't follow the wheel and it's more like a rally car. But I'd rather these went further along so you can still access them when your hand's at the top or the bottom. But I thought they were going to be really awkward to use. That's me driving really bad. I thought the gears were going to be really awkward to use. Bad, there you go, habits from a wheel that has gears attached to the wheel. I thought these were going to be really bad to use with them not being on the wheel, but actually it hasn't taken that long for it to get reasonably used to having them fixed. And you can, of course, go and buy, you can attach different wheels to this, which is really nice. And some of them have clicky bits, the gears on the wheel, mounted to the wheel itself. You can even get like an F1 style wheel as well, which is really good. So I think that covers most of the good points. Onto the another good point, it clamps onto the table all right. A lot of people say, it doesn't clamp on very well, but it's fine. It doesn't really move about that much. And to be honest, my issue has been my table wobbling, because this is a really hefty device. Onto the bad points. Love the bad points. The first bad point, the most important bad point I find, is that it's not quite as tight as, say, like the G25 in terms of really precise movement. Oops. Feels like there's a lot of dampening, which in some ways makes it feel kind of realistic in that there's a rubbery feel. But and with road cars, I think it feels really similar to a road car with like power steering. But for a race car that's really snappy and really violent and jaggedy in terms of how they respond to the road and pick up small bumps. It feels dampened, which I think some people that are really used to wheels like the G27, G25 might find really irritating. And then the immediate initial turning amount, there seems to be a reasonable amount of play before the wheel actually engages, if that makes sense. Is that, if I'm driving straight here, I wiggle the wheel there, it's not really doing anything, and you can feel that there's like a gap in the force feedback, almost like a dead zone. So that, I think it's not a problem with slower GT cars, or these supercars. It's not a real issue because you're not really inputting at such a tight tolerance. But if you're the type of person that drives GP2, F1 cars, radicals and stuff, that might irritate you. It might not. You're still going to be able to do alien laps, but I think that will start getting annoying, and it will, for me, it make it harder to do good laps with. Other bad points, the size of it, although is a good point in some ways, in that presumably it allows for it to have a massive motor, it also means that it is quite a hefty unit, and you're probably going to want to put it on a sim rig. I mean, that's not really that much of a bad thing, because if you're buying this wheel, you're probably going to have the money to spend on a sim rig, because this wheel's 350 quid and a sim rig's like, what, 120? It does work on a table though, but getting into the zone here. The AI in Assetto Corsa is still a bit crazy. Just dent my supercar. I'm trying to think of other points. Some of the rumble effects and stuff again feel somewhat dampened, and although the force feedback is really strong, it's not that jarring. I mean, I don't know if you see servo wheels, ever have the chance to use one, or see a real world car wheel, if you go over certain bumps or get knocked, the force feedback will wrench the wheel pretty much out of your hand. It'll almost control itself. And although the force feedback is really strong with this, and in a lot of scenarios it will correct the car in the right way, which is really nice, and it does make driving slower cars a lot easier because the wheel's doing some of the driving work for you, in other situations it's just not fast enough, and the dampening aspect of it gets in the way of what you're trying to do. Now again, using the G25 as reference, that wheel a lot of times is really slow, especially if you go past if you go past 90 degrees on the G25, its rotational speed is not fast enough to correct itself. It is just too slow. But as the driver, you can manually push the wheel around, whereas with this, it's a lot harder to, when this wheel happens to be too slow in certain situations, it's a lot harder to manually override the wheel, which then puts you at a disadvantage compared to someone that is either using a servo wheel that corrects properly, or a G25 that allows the user to make up for the issues of the force feedback wheel. The wheel rim itself is really plasticky and rubbery. It's just going to wear out. There's already some marks on this one, and I've not had it that long. I've probably only done about 10-15 hours of driving in it, and I mean, yeah, I guess you're going to want to wear gloves with it because of the nature of this. My hand's sticking to it because I've got sweaty mountain climbing hands. What with the stress of driving a simulator. But it just feels tacky. And it's really weird because the wheel's quite expensive. It's like, why not just put a little, a nice leather coating on it? Even if that added a little bit of cost to it. Maybe some of the other wheels, I think the F1 wheel you can get, it's more plasticky, but it's harder plastic, so it doesn't feel, it's not as tacky as this one, so maybe that's better. I don't know, I haven't tried it. But yeah, it's a bit disappointing that the default wheel is so tacky. Oh, the pedals and brakes, I think they're totally fine. A lot of people complain about them, saying, oh, they're not as good as the G25 pedals, and I think they're just different. I mean, the brake seems to have a weird progression to it. It's not a linear progression. Oops. So you've got like a soft bit and then a harder bit, and it's like a weird in between a normal potentiometer brake and one of those load cell brakes. Even though, I mean, it does use a potentiometer. I think it's fine. To be honest, you know, you can drive totally fine with it. Didn't take me much time to feel moderately comfortable moving from the Logitech pedals to these pedals, so that's fine. You don't get a gearbox with it, which I think is a bit rubbish, because that's another £100, and so you're starting to add all this cost to really get the most out of this wheel. You're going to need a gearbox, you're going to need a sim rig. So really you're looking at like £600, like a £350 initial force feedback wheel investment very soon turns into a lot more. The car models in this game look absolutely gorgeous. I mean, look at that. I don't even like Ferrari, well I do like Ferraris, but I don't have a thing for cars, but clearly I do. Just looks amazing. Well, there you go. Car fantasies coming out there. Of course, I own a couple Ferrari F40s in real life. I mean, who doesn't? Really nice exhaust effect they've done in Assetto Corsa as well. I'm such a fanboy for this game. R-Factor 2 and iRacing work really well with this wheel, and actually if you do a lot of R-Factor 2 and that's your main sim, then I'd recommend this wheel over a Logitech wheel or more direct drive wheel, because the dampening on this and the nature of the belt dampens a lot of the aspects of R-Factor that make the G25 shake and make a lot of noise. And again, with cars like the Skip Barber and the Megane Trophy, all drive really well with this wheel and feel in many ways a lot better with this than they do with the G25. iRacing, the cars in that, I find it easy to play iRacing with the G25, but this again made the cars feel more heavy and in many ways more realistic. The dampening slowed me down a little bit, but it seemed to work nice with the iRacing, and obviously it just plugs in and works straight away, this wheel, with anything. So I mean, it's a PC wheel. So yeah, you need to get an external gear stick, which is a bit of an irritating, and ideally you need to replace this wheel. So even though it's $280 to $350 to buy this, what are the AI doing? Realistically, you're going to end up spending $450 to get the most out of this wheel, or to get it to where it should be as a wheel. Not sure if there's many other points to convey about it. There's weird, like, there are some weird noises that come from it, and the motor seems to have this, it sounds like the belt's slipping. It's not slipping, I think it's just the when the magnets apply certain amounts of force to the motor, it makes this notchy sound. It sounds a little bit strange. Oh yeah, there we go, another negative on our jolly fellow. If you rotate the wheel a long way around, like to do drifting, and you're letting go of the wheel, it's still not fast enough to correct the car as a real car would be corrected. And then in a situation, I'm just cruising around with these supercars, but if you're really pushing it and you're on the limit, with this wheel rim at least, I don't know with the F1 wheel, the actual time it takes for the motor to correct itself after you've gone, say the car's been pushed one way and then the motor goes, and then the motor gets a signal from the game to turn the wheel the other way, the wheel seems just delayed in those situations, which I don't have a problem with that, particularly with the Logitech, with the cheaper Logitech G25 wheel. So again, this is one of those things which is going to be more noticeable if you're an alien racer, or if you're really pushing to the limit and you're going for those, you know, really precise world record lap times. I think this wheel just makes it harder, and it's not from the force feedback being stronger and it making it harder in that way, which personally I enjoy. It's from the actual response of the wheel just seems slow in many ways, even though the rotation speed is faster and even though it has stronger, really nice force feedback. So it's a weird one, because you're spending 350 quid on this wheel and you're expecting like a premium wheel, and many aspects of it are really premium. It is really nice, but at the same time there's many aspects to the cheaper Logitech wheels that I prefer over this wheel. So it's like, in an ideal world, you'd have both wheels for different tasks. They're kind of like, the G25 is like the G25 to G27 is like a dagger, and this is like a knight's sword. One's for poking people's eyes out and being precise, and the other one's for smashing people's bones and bludgeoning them to death. So it's a shame that's the case. I don't think this is the wheel to end all wheels. It's not a bad purchase, and I think it's really good fun to use. And as I say, it has many aspects that are better than the G25, but then it has some crucial aspects that are worse. I really want to try the CSW out. I'm going to try and get hold of one of them and see how much that bridges the gap. Ultimately though, my fear, which I think this wheel partially confirms, which is likely the case, is that all consumer wheels are going to be crippled in some way or have some issue that stops them from meeting the basic specification that's required for a wheel to work properly with a simulator and not be as abstract as all these consumer wheels are. And ultimately you're going to need a servo wheel. That's going to be the only wheel that can do 200 RPM at 10 plus Newton meters of torque. And well, to get one of them you can either get a Bodner wheel that's like $2.5 grand, the Senso drive wheel, which is another that's like $5 grand, and then there's a couple of people, I can't say the names, that are working on consumer, sort of not consumer level, but they're like hobbyist servo wheels, where you buy a controller box for 800 quid, well 500 or so quid, you buy the motor for a couple of £100, £400-500, and you buy whatever their control board is. So ultimately it probably end up costing between £800 to £1,300, and then you'd have a wheel that actually works as a real car wheel. It'd rotate, it'd be infinitely precise, it'd be incredibly loose. But yeah, that's probably going to cost at least £1,200. So that's what I'm worried about, is that we're never going to see a consumer wheel at a consumer price point, which I would say ideally a consumer price point I think is 250 quid, so this is already going over that. But £350 for something that actually drives like a real car wheel would be a dream, and I don't think that dream's going to happen for at least another 10 years. So it's going to be over to the Oculus Rift and just playing with our T500s and G25s basically in CSWs. But I hope that was useful. I hope I've gone over different points that, you know, for this T500 wheel that might not have been covered in other videos. Take what I say with a pinch of salt. You know, there's going to be subjective aspects to it. As I say, ultimately for something like this, it's like TVs and projectors. You need to go to a shop or find a friend to borrow one off and actually try it out for yourself to find out if you like it. Here for scale, that's how big the wheel is. It's a bad joke. So yeah, that'll do for now. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to it, like my channel, all that business. I do appreciate people writing comments. I love the Ferrari F40 model, the rear of the car especially. I'm going to be uploading some more videos. If you haven't yet, check out the review of this wheel. I tried to make it as interesting as possible because I think hardware reviews are somewhat boring normally. Yeah, take care, goodbye.